All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. We've got Iowa State we're talking about today. We've been on the Big 12 and we continue with it. Guys, who do we think the best transfer Iowa State got was in this offseason?
Like we kind of talked about off air, I think it's either Dominic Nelson coming over from Utah Valley, or it's Mason Williams from Eastern Washington. I'm going to side with Mason Williams, simply because I think he's a better shooter, and two, I think he also has more shooting upside. You look at his first year at Eastern Washington. Granted, his minutes weren't super high, but he shot 47% on 32 attempts. So just about 50%, 15 to 32. Last year, his volume was up. He was 34.5% still. I think he can shoot it better than that. And now he's going to be playing alongside Lipsy. He's going to be playing alongside Joshua Jefferson, who can make plays. I think he's going to get some better looks probably. He's not going to have as much focus on him. As for Dominic Nelson, like he didn't shoot a ton of threes. Only 87 of his 349 attempts last year were from three, and he shot right around 25%, 25.3%. So, I think they're both like good gets for them to come in and replace the guards that they lost in Curtis Jones and Keyshawn Gilbert. But I'm going to say Williams was probably the better get here.
Yeah, it seems like he fits in better with the system, with the team they already have. But Cody, what are you thinking? Do you agree?
Yeah, I'll say Williams as well, just because the shooting upside is there a little bit. I think it's more he's not great in the catch and shoot department. He kind of struggled in that area, especially last year. And he's a little bit more of like a secondary creator next to a guy like Lipsy, and you're going to see Joshua Jefferson playing a lot of like point forward in the system, playing through him in the post, and he's going to be able to draw two guys at times and create looks for shooters. So, but I do think Williams has more upside on the offensive end. He's also not a terrible defender. He's at least like projectable in this system. He's 6'5", 180 pounds. He's got length. He can test shots at a super high level. So I like him as a projectable defender in this system. With Otzelberger, you're gonna have to defend. You're gonna have to play with a lot of energy. So I do think potentially, just not playing harder. I mean, I'm not going to question how hard he plays, but just playing in a better defensive system, a program that kind of, emphasizes that. I do think you can get a little bit more out of him. With a guy like Nelson, you're going to get more of a transition reliant, rim reliant guard. Like you said, Marcus, he's not really the greatest shooter and doesn't really project to be a great shooter. He's a 69% free throw shooter, although he does get to the line a ton. He had a 68.9% free throw rate, which is pretty impressive, but only converted it at a 69% clip. And yeah, it's a 12th percentile catch and shoot efficiency guard. He's more transition reliant, loves to get downhill and score it at the cup, has a little bit of mid-range creation in his game, but he's going to be probably getting more of the spot minutes and being more not a defensive specialist, but I do think he does have more defensive upside with his added athleticism and length compared to Mason Williams. So I do think he fits well on that side. If you want a comparison for his game, it's sort of Keyshawn Gilbert-ish. He's not as great on either side, but it's that kind of archetype. So, but overall, I will take Williams because he has more of the two-way ability that can translate to the Big 12 right away.
Are there any other transfers that stand out to you guys?
Blake Buchanan, that he's solid. I've never been like the highest on him. Big coming over from Virginia. I think he has some room to grow here. Now he's going to have some opportunity. He was playing 22 minutes a game last year at Virginia. Comes over here they're trying to replace a front court. They have Jefferson still, but they lost 6'10" and 6'11" in Brandon Chatfield and Deshaun Jackson. So they had to go out and get some some big help, and Blake Buchanan was one. And then, they did get a little bit smaller, I think, in the front court. I think that's probably where they have a little bit of question mark. Because Eric Mulder came over from Purdue Fort Wayne. I think he's probably like a 4 type guy. I think he's like 6'8". So, I'm a little bit skeptical of like the moves they made maybe in the front court to replace what they had. But, maybe Buchanan can make do.
Yeah, Cody, what do you think?
I think I like Buchanan a little bit more than Marcus does here. I like him as a defender in the system way more. I don't think he provides all that much on the offensive end. Like he's a little bit of a lob threat, offensive rebounder, can provide some value as a pick and roll man, but I don't really see much of his offensive game translating. And I think this is more of a platoon with Buchanan and Mulder, like with maybe a few more minutes in favor of Buchanan. But I really like him on the defensive end. His combination of length and mobility make him a really good fit in this system. He can defend the pick and roll in multiple ways. Like we saw Otzelberger play a little bit more drop coverage in the middle of the floor last season. Like he can play in that because of his rim protection skills, and he can also high hedge just because of his mobility and recovery skills. So I do like him quite a bit in the system. He's not the greatest defensive rebounder, but I do think he's actually one of the more talented rim protectors that Otzelberger's like had in his 3 or 4 years here. I don't really, besides like Hassan Ward 2 years ago, I don't really see like a more talented rim protector than Buchanan in this system. So I do think that's pretty important for, a 2-point defense in Iowa State that hasn't been the greatest, just partly because of the system. But I do think Buchanan can help in multiple areas. And then with Mulder, just real quick, he's going to be more, if you want a comparison, Iowa State fans, he's more Brandon Chatfield than he is anything else. He's a really, really good offensive rebounder, plays with a ton of energy, plays much bigger than his 6'8", 225-pound frame. He's a strong lower half, gets, establishes position well on the interior, and plays with a ton of energy getting on the offensive glass. Doesn't provide anything in like the creation or post-up area. He's more of a roll man, scoring the dunker spot a little bit. He's not really an above the rim player, but yeah, he's more Brandon Chatfield on the offensive end, and defensively, not the most mobile, but provides some rim protection. He's a little bit lengthy. I'd say he has 7 foot 7'1" wingspan. Not super strong, but he can provide some value, at least on the defensive glass.
Do we think we could see them playing smaller more?
Yeah, I think Jefferson could play the 5. I think he can
like
absolutely
with
play the
Jefferson,
5.
Montilovich, and then Lipsy, Williams, and Nelson.
Yeah, I mean that. At the end of the day, that could actually end up being their ideal lineup. I know they're probably not going to rebound on the defensive end all that well with that lineup, but a guy like Dom Nelson, like 5 rebounds per game, 16, I think it was 16% defensive rebound rate. That's pretty good for a projected like 2 or 3 guard. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, like if that could optimize their spacing if Nelson's a little bit better shooting the ball. I don't really see that, but yeah, it's definitely an option.
So it sounds like we definitely think Buchanan adds a defensive asset to this upcoming season, but how do we feel as a whole? Do these guys fit the system well? Do they not fit the system well? Marcus, I'll start with you.
I think they fit it okay. I mean, I'll be curious to see how they fit like defensively. Buchanan, as Cody mentioned, like he has the ability to make an impact there. The Iowa State that we've come to know and love under Otzelberger is like, what if anybody watched their game against like BYU last year at home when they were down like 23 and came back and sent it to overtime, like that's really like the Iowa State defensive identity. That's like, I'm just going to get up in you and turn you over at half court. So I think like Nelson, Williams, can they come in and do that? I would like to think so. I think that Otzelberger, like he knows what he's looking for in his recruits. I think he's one of the better coaches in the country. So I'm going to trust that, he sees that in those guys. So I don't hate the fit. I'm just going to need to see it out of the guards, I think, in replacing the guards that they lost.
Cody, what are your thoughts?
I think this team is going to look more like the 2023 or 2024 Iowa State team. I don't think they have a ceiling of a 2 seed because I am pretty worried about the offense in general. Like I'm not super high on Nelson's game just because of the shooting not really being there. Buchanan is really a negative on the offensive end, so I do worry in that area. I really like Jefferson, but he can only do so much as like a point forward. But I do see this defense being borderline top 5. So they're going to have a high floor. It's not going to be, but they're not going to have the championship ceiling that I thought they had this past season. They kind of fizzled out just because injuries kind of got them. But they were still the 20th best adjusted offense in the country per Torvik. I think we're going to see them closer to like that 50 to 75 range, like we've seen in the 3 years prior with Iowa State under Otzelberger.
Can you give us kind of a tournament seeding of a floor that we're looking at with this Iowa State team?
5.
A 5.
6.
Marcus?
Well, Florida.
Floor, I was going to say floor 8-9.
8-9. Cody,
That's probably fair.
I could see them in the 8. I could see them in the 8-9 game. I think I could see them as high as a 4, maybe. 4. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I don't really see them as being like a top 10 team in the country. So they're outside the top 3 seeds to me at least. But that's right now. It is May 28th. So you never know.
Right.
Yeah. I think their defense could get them to being like a top 10 team at some point in the season, but I just think at some point this offense is going to fizzle out. I'm not high on the perimeter creation. Like Williams is probably their most talented perimeter option at this point, but Lipsey's never really been like a creator for others. I mean, he's more transition reliant. He's more of a smart guard as opposed to, he's always kind of making the right decisions. He's not making any game changing, needle moving plays, but he is a high floor guard. So yeah, I'll say 8. I think 8-9 is fair for the floor and closer to a 3-4 ceiling, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Any final thoughts from you guys?
It's the team that I love to watch play. So I'll be tuned in to them all the time, and hopefully these transfers translate a little bit better, particularly Williams and Nelson, to kind of raise this team's ceiling. But yeah, no other thoughts from me.
Awesome. Marcus?
No, I think that you're going to see a different Iowa State team. It's going to look a little bit different, as Cody said, probably more resembling the teams from a few years ago. So, we'll see if they can make that work, but I don't really see it as championship upside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with Cody. I really like watching this team play. So hopefully they'll have a good season, and I think they'll definitely compete in the Big 12. But as always, thank you guys for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast, and we'll be back with some more transfer portal analysis next week.